You may not know the name Ross and Squibb, but if you're into bourbon or rye, there's a good chance you've already tasted their whiskey. See, for years, this place quietly powered the shelves of liquor stores across the country. If you've got a bottle that says distilled in Indiana, yeah, that's them. Before it was Ross and Squibb, it was MGP. And before that, it was one of the oldest and most important distilleries in America. Today, we're going to take you behind the scenes, not just for a deep dive into this historic distillery, but to walk through a barrel pick, a real one, with real people, for 2 unforgettable barrels. Before we dive into the behind-the-scenes look at one of the most iconic distilleries in American whiskey, let me tell you a little bit about what's happening today and who's here with me. This isn't your average barrel pick. I've been lucky enough to be part of a lot of them over the years. More than 800, actually. Picks with the ABV network, picks with a big box retailer I used to work with back in St. Louis, and with groups like the New Orleans Bourbon Festival and Bourbon's Bistro. These days, I run the ABV Barrel Shop, a store I co-founded that's entirely focused on single barrel picks. In fact, it's the only shop in the world that sells nothing but single barrels. Last year alone, we brought in 74 barrels. And today, I've brought along the folks who bought every single one of those picks, every last bottle. We call them Team 74. They're not just customers. They're the heartbeat of what we do. And now they're here, helping make the call on our next 2 barrels. We're also joined by Dustin, the Missouri field manager for MGP, the folks behind the Remus Bourbon and Rossville Union Rye we're picking today. And leading us through it all is Ross and Squibb's master distiller, Ian Stirsman. Together, Team 74, Dustin, Ian, and myself, we're tasting through barrels and making a decision that's going to end up on the shelves of the ABV Barrel Shop. This is where the story begins.
This is a fun event for us. This is an opportunity to come to a distillery that people don't get to go to. And it's a special occurrence when this happens. Now, I've been lucky. I've been able to come to MGP. This is my 3rd trip here. I've done some media stuff here. I have done a barrel pick with my old friend Jim Fosnack back in the day. And then this is the first one we've done at the ABV Barrel Shop.
To lead us through the day, we've got Ian Stirsman, master distiller at Ross and Squibb. He's not just the guy behind the stills. He's our guide through history, production, and taste.
We have the Colonel Steve Ackley with us from the ABV Spirits Network, and we're picking some barrels today, doing a little tour of the distillery. Hopefully we'll have some good barrels for you and have a little fun.
We're standing in places most folks never see.
We're in the basement of one of the rick houses, which not a lot of tourists come down here.
To understand where we are, you've got to know where this place came from. It started in 1847 as the Squibb Distillery. Over the years, it was Rossville, and behind it was the Squibb Distillery. Then Squibb became Shenley, and Rossville became Seagram's. You can still see the history in the buildings.
Those rick houses up there, you can only see a couple of them from here, but all those big concrete and brick houses up there were part of the Shenley Distillery. And then this one right here that looks a little different was actually part of the original Rossville Distillery. We're not sure how old this one is because we don't have any drawings that predate Seagram's era. So this one is probably the oldest on site here. But one kind of interesting thing you can see standing right here specifically is that you can see the Rossville Distillery rick houses, the old Shenley or Squibb Distillery rick houses, and then the Seagram's there. And they kind of kept within the same styles. The big concrete and steel structures with the brick facades, 6 stories high, 6 ricks high a story, but they kept that style here throughout the years. A lot of people think that was like the Seagram style, but it was actually, here well before Seagram's.
Eventually, Seagram's was sold, and in 2011, the plant became known as MGP of Indiana. They weren't bottling under their own label, but they were making the whiskey behind brands you already know. It's one thing to drink whiskey made here. It's another thing entirely to walk the halls, meet the people, and pick the barrels. Our guide on the brand side of things today? Dustin Paris, field sales manager for MGP, and a guy who knows this whiskey better than almost anyone.
My name is Dustin Paris, and I am a field sales manager in the Midwest for a small company called MGP. We have a really cool and vast portfolio. Right now, some of our more exciting items are going to be that Yellowstone bourbon coming out of Limestone Branch. We also own and operate Luxro Distillers. That's going to make your Rebel bourbon, your Ezra bourbon. And right now we're standing in the Mecca in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, where we produce not only our Remus and Rossville bourbons, but actually all the Penelope bourbons are also distilled right here as well.
This place might not offer tours to the general public, but make no mistake, they touch more whiskey brands than most distilleries even dream of.
Coming in and doing a tasting here is not something that we normally allow the general public to do. So this is a really special treat.
You get to do a lot of cool things here, John. Let's be honest. How much fun is doing something like this? Bringing in with a bunch of bourbon enthusiasts, making a barrel pick at a place where they don't normally get to go. What are your thoughts about making a pick at Ross's Day?
When they use the phrase laughing all the way to the bank, they're talking about me. All right. The fact that I've got to spend the last 2 days hanging out with the ABV network, their syndicate group, people who have been there day in and day out, eating, drinking, breathing the bourbon industry. And we have this beautiful, close-knit group of people, the friends I've made this trip, the times we've shared, not to mention the whiskey we drank. I mean, this has been a really, really great experience.
And what exactly were we tasting? 2 barrels, 4 bourbon samples, 3 ryes, 1 shot at making the right call. And when it comes to barrel picks,
we have a system. I think then the system vets it out, so everyone ranks all of them. So it doesn't matter. In this example here, we're tasting 4 Remus bourbons, and then you rank them 1 to 4. And then we go around the room and we'll ask everybody what their score is, and then we'll calculate that. And obviously, number 1 being the favorite, 4 being the least favorite. The one that scores the lowest is the one that we pick. So that's kind of our system. It's been tried and true for us. It doesn't necessarily always mean like my favorite wins or the one that has the most number 1s, but if it's consistent, if it has, it's always ranked number 2 or number 3, it's consistently up there, especially when you get bigger numbers, it allows it to bubble up to the top. And that's it's been a very good system for us to get bourbon that people like, as opposed to something that's divisive, maybe just one person really likes it. So I think it really helps us in our business model.
And let me tell you, today's picks, pretty special. The first flight? Bourbon. We were hoping for something bold, complex, and smooth enough to stand alone. The name on the bottle will say Remus, but there's a bigger story behind that name. George Remus was no ordinary bootlegger. He was a pharmacist, a lawyer, and the so-called king of the bootleggers, a man who used legal loopholes to build an empire during Prohibition. At one point, Remus controlled 1/3 of all bootlegged liquor in the U.S. F. Scott Fitzgerald is even said to have based Gatsby on him. Today, Ross and Squibb puts his name on their flagship bourbon. And the barrel we found? Let's just say it lived up to the legend.
We picked a Remus barrel pick that we just love. We love the taste of it. It had a nice, incredible finish. It was sweet and then spicy on the back end. Just amazing. So that was one that our consensus was, that was D in our first picks. We tried 4, A, B, C, D. It was the 4th one that we tried, and it was the one that was the winner.
Next up, rye. Rossville Union, a name pulled straight from the 1800s. When Lawrenceburg was already known for rye whiskey, long before bourbon stole the spotlight. Rossville is where it all began back in 1847. The name disappeared for a while, but when MGP rebranded as Ross and Squibb, they brought it back, honoring the oldest roots of this distillery. And when it comes to rye, these folks aren't playing around. Their signature 95-5 rye mash bill has powered some of the most beloved rye brands on the market. But this time, we picked the one going out under their own name.
Then in the second one, we did EFG, and we had a runaway winner on that one. So G was just runaway. I think at least half of our people voted for that. That's a Rossville Union Rye, and that's going to come in about 110 proof, I think. And again, nice, spicy, a little bit of sweet notes to it. I think it is a rye that will also appeal to bourbon drinkers, which is pretty special.
2 barrels, 1 bourbon, 1 rye, and a tasting experience you don't forget. But more than that, what we walked away with wasn't just whiskey. It was a deeper appreciation for the people, the history, and the place behind it all. For decades, this distillery was the backbone of America's whiskey boom, not by selling its own bottles, but by filling everyone else's. And it wasn't just volume, it was quality. Ross and Squibb perfected some of the most iconic mash bills in the game, starting with their 95% rye, 5% malted barley formula we mentioned earlier. That recipe became the blueprint for modern American rye. It's the whiskey behind Bullet, Templeton, Redemption, Dickel Rye, and dozens of other labels. But it wasn't just rye. Their bourbon mash bills, especially the one with 36% rye, set a new standard for high rye bourbon. If you've ever had a sip of bourbon that drinks bold and spicy but finishes clean, chances are it was born right here. And now, the distillery is bottling its best barrels under its own name, not for someone else's label, but for Ross and Squibb.
I mean, I think our own products we're putting out, Remus Bourbon, Rossville Union Rye, we probably can be more picky than any other distillery out there of what we're putting in the bottle for ourselves. And I think we don't always get the attention we deserve.
That day, tasting those barrels, we felt it. This wasn't just contract whiskey. This was house-made, hand-picked, legacy-driven bourbon and rye. And it was time these barrels got the spotlight. You don't need a fancy story when the whiskey speaks for itself, but here at Ross and Squibb, you get both. We came for 2 barrels, 1 bourbon, 1 rye. We tasted through 7 samples, took our time, and stuck to the process. The Remus pick hit us late, but hard. A rich, sweet bourbon with a spicy tail that lingered like a good memory. That one earned its place. Then came the rye. And this time, no debate, it was a runaway winner. What we picked that day wasn't just about flavor, it was about story. It was about walking in the footsteps of whiskey history, about seeing the warehouses, meeting the people, and respecting the place that made it all possible.
The friends I've made this trip, the times we've shared, not to mention the whiskey we drank. I mean, this has been a really, really great experience. And the fact that at the end of the day, I'm going to get a paycheck for doing all this, that's pretty special.
At Ross and Squibb, the barrels run deep, with flavor, with history, with stories worth sharing. And this time, 2 of those stories are coming home with us. Bottled, labeled, and ready for the next chapter. 2 barrels, 1 chance. And for us, one hell of a pour.